My next guest is Dr. Cecelia Gillam. She is a native of New Orleans and has earned a doctorate in educational leadership from Southeastern Louisiana University of Hammond. Dr. Gillam has been a science teacher for 19 years. She's helped write science district curriculum and assessments for environmental science. She is an advocate for the National Equity Project by being selected as a board member for the Black Teacher Project. She is an ambassador for Peridec and EduPuzzle. Dr. Gillum has earned the distinction of being an ISTE certified educator. She is a member of the inaugural group of trendsetters for Veneer. She also serves as a coach for Screencastify. Her involvement in the ed tech world does not stop with her role as an ambassador and coach. She is also a distinguished modern classroom educator and expert mentor for Modern Classroom. Cecilia is a teacher leader advisory in ed tech content for the Louisiana Department of Education. She serves as an ambassador for EchoRise and has attended and presented at multiple national conferences, including ISTE and NSTA, to train teachers on how to incorporate EdTech tools into their classrooms. Cecilia created STEP Team to engage at-risk youth in a positive community service-based organization. She has published a motivational children's book that can be found on Amazon. The book is called Black Girl, You Are Amazing. She is a national grand prize winner for the Shell Grant, Lab Grant and a recent recipient of the Shell Urban Educator Development Award. Dr. Gillum comes with a wealth of knowledge that can benefit all science teachers across the nation. She has served as an affinity group leader for the state of Louisiana with the goal of helping to retain and pre-service new science teachers. Her knowledge and skill sets will be very beneficial for the science community. Well, welcome to the podcast, Cecilia.
Hello, and thank you for having me today, Dana.
Well, we'll talk about all those different things that you do, but first of all, I wanted to ask you a time you were in the trenches and managed to call out.
Oh, wow. That's a big one. A time that I was in the trenches was basically when I was working at a school and they were sanctioning me about like science fair because like I'm a really huge science fair person and I just so happened to be teaching some very prominent students, like their parents were like up in the district and
Hmm.
they didn't like the fact that I was requiring them to do science fair, which I thought was the craziest thing. So anyway, long story short, I got in trouble for it. And my supervisor at the time was like, well, we got to stop doing science fair and making it a requirement. And so the way that I crawled out of that was I was like, I just need some guidance
Hmm.
on this. And I ended up actually switching schools to where now, they are supportive of, that because I think like STEM in general is just important for students and giving them that space to explore is
Hmm.
extremely important. And I find that's probably why science fairs are dying is because nobody's supporting them anymore. So anyway, so that was like one of my, I guess, the biggest story that I can always think back to because I'm like so happy that where I'm at now, I'm able to still, invoke that love for STEM with my students.
So I talked about some of the different things that you do as an expert mentor. First of all, let's talk about the Modern Classrooms project. So I connected with you through their website. So talk to me about what the Modern Classrooms project is and what you do for them.
So the Modern Classroom Project is it's a pedagogy where you are creating moments of personalized learning for each student. It's a lot of self-pacing, and so that students are able to basically work at their own pace because you set it up where you have these must do's, you have some should do's and aspire to do's, and the kids all understand that by the end of that lesson that they have to complete all if they can't do anything else you must at least complete all of your must do's before you can take your mastery check because it's a
Hmm.
lot about mastery based learning and just
Yeah.
allowing students to not feel that pressure. And I found like since adopting this pedagogy that my students no longer feel like that stress of, oh, if I'm lagging behind, that means I'm not good enough. And like I tell them, it has nothing to do with that. Like we all need just processing time. And so, that is what it is in a nutshell.
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
kids
So the students, basically, are they able, is like learning target completion? Are they able to complete things on their at their own pace?
Yeah, so most teachers set up what's called like either a game board or this
Okay.
it's a lesson tracker where they get the list of all the assignments and they get their due dates, their
Okay.
target due date, then they get the hard deadline. At least that's how it's set up in my classroom. And so they know what they have to do by this day because they know, all right, mastery check is coming on the next Friday. So I know that I need to complete all of these things by that date because some misconceptions about the process, people think that kids can just turn in work whenever. And I'm like, no, that would be crazy. And you
Hmm.
will go crazy in the process if you do that.
Yeah.
But they, teaching them those parameters inside of that.
Okay. Okay. I named a bunch of tech tools for which you are certified or also an ambassador. And I think the most people are most familiar with are, Screencastify, um, Pear Deck, EduPuzzle. Talk to me a little bit about maybe when you started getting these certifications and maybe the challenge of getting some of these as well, and how you also train others.
So I guess I'll start when I first entered into like the ed tech space. So I will never forget I was at a professional development through NEH where I was in Savannah learning about the Gullah people. And
Mhm.
anyway, I was put into this group and we had to create a PowerPoint. And
Okay.
so a person in our group was like, I use Pear Deck, and another person was like, I use Nearpod. And so at the time, I had no idea what any of this was because I tell people all the time, I was probably on the lowest end of tech as possible because
Hmm.
I didn't want to do it. I started teaching without it. I was like, we don't need this. So anyway, I tried it out and we had to do our presentation and I just fell in love with Pear Deck. And so the journey really started for me when what it was. A Pear Deck used to do this thing called Share the Pair. And if you
Okay.
share the pair, you would get your subscription for free. And so me being a teacher who barely had any, money or funds like that, I said, oh my God, I got to figure out how to do this. And so that's how I started actually becoming a presenter from sharing a pair with
Hmm.
educators so that I could keep my subscription to Pear Deck. And then from there, that led me, to start going to conferences and meeting people. And that's how I found out about Screencastify. It was like, oh, there's this new thing where you can record videos for your students. And so I was experiencing high absenteeism
Hmm.
and I would get kids come 10 days later talking about what we did 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, I have no idea what we did. And so I would record videos and like what we did in class that day and post them. And
Hmm.
so from there, I like to learn as much as I possibly can about a product.
Hmm.
And also in my old district, you didn't get qualified unless you were certified.
Okay.
So they didn't believe that you knew what you knew unless you were certified. And so that I think was really the primary drive for that. But what I will say the hardest one for me was the ISTE certification
Hmm.
because that one I really had to stretch myself as an educator and just really focus in on me. Whereas
Hmm.
like those other ones, it was like, all right, come on, train other people or learn this product. But with ISTE certification, you are really like delving more deeply into yourself, your
Hmm.
practices, and how you are using tech in your classroom. And so I think I grew the most from that one, but I love my partnerships because Pear Deck Learning, I can actually email in or call some of the like high people and be like, hey, I need some help with this. Or whenever they're launching products, I get to be an early adapter for those products and get
Hmm.
to, participate in beta. Ed Puzzle, I love them. I am an ambassador for them. And just getting like all of the love and the support. That's why I tell people like get in if you can, get certified and use the products. And when they see that you're using it, they
Hmm.
pull you in because I took like Ed Puzzle ambassadorship. That one was really fun to me because I remember I got this email and it was like, hey, we looking for ambassadors, but I thought it was spam. So I just
Hmm.
kept on. I was like, why would Ed Puzzle want me to be ambassador? And so I ignored it, but then they like
Hmm.
sent another one and it was from Manny. And I was like, this must be real. Let me look into this because it was like you got 2 or 3 more days or whatever to finish something. And I was like, well, let me go ahead and do this. And I'm glad that they nudged me because I really thought it was spam.
Hmm. Hmm. And so you do consistently present using some of these tools at conferences as well as at ISTE. Talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the conferences besides ISTE and the National Science Teacher Conference? Do you do like regional conferences as well?
Yes. So I pretty much try to go to any conference that I can. And I put in proposals to see if they'll stick because
Mhm.
my thing is it's no good if all of the knowledge resides within me.
Yeah.
And I feel like because what I'm doing is working and I know that more students would benefit. So I will do like here, I'm in Louisiana, so I have done like the LaQ, I've done NASB, NSTA. Like I just came from doing a presentation at NSTA. So
Hmm.
anyone that I can get my foot into the door or somebody will tell me like, hey, so and so is having a conference. I think you should submit a proposal. That is what I would do. And then
Hmm.
it also helps cut down some of them. If you get selected to do a proposal, you get a discounted registration. So everything really for me a lot of time falls back down to how can I save my district so they will say yes and
Hmm.
let me
Hmm.
go. Because
Yeah,
usually if I
yeah,
tell them, you don't have to pay for anything, they're like, oh, okay, you can go.
yeah.
So
So I'm sure at the conferences you also talk about keeping your students engaged. Talk to me about what you currently teach in high school science, but also some of the projects that you do that maybe get them off the computer as well.
yes. So I currently teach honors biology and I also teach AP environmental science. And anybody, if you come to my class or you like look at my TikTok, you will see, even though it's a modern classroom, my students are not on a computer all day long. Because some people think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if you modernize the classroom, this automatically means that they are on a computer. And I'm like, no, they are not.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of hands-on because that is how children they actually learn. And that's how they're actually engaged in the content that you do. And so I always make sure that every lesson that we do has some kind of hands-on, real world relevant component, not just hands-on, because sometimes people just, oh, we did an experiment, but what did, kids didn't get anything. And I let them design their experiments. Like I really do follow the NGSS standards where they plan and they go and conduct their experiment. And my students have to get used to me because a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll say, do you think this is right? And I turn it back to him and I said, do you think it's right? I said, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not what Dr. Gillam wants. It's
Yeah.
what are you trying to learn as a result of doing this experiment? And then through that, they are able to start sense making. They are able to start making those connections. And then I just come in on a back end just to make sure that I clear up all the misconceptions. And that's really how my classes ran. And so a lot of times my students had to get used to that because
Mm-hmm.
students are programmed to think that the teacher is just supposed to stand up there and like lecture at them. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
y'all, if that was the key to success, I would have everybody do it. Like, that is not the key. Because, like I tell them, my goal is so that you can go out into the world and be a critical thinker and a
Mm-hmm.
problem solver. And you're not relying on everybody to, disseminate the information. I say, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't know everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So is it a lot different now, though, teaching these upper level classes and getting them to do some of these hands-on activities versus when you taught middle schoolers?
no, the older kids, I would say it's a lot, for me, it's a lot easier because they're they're a little bit more mature, so they're not
Yeah.
breaking my
Hmm.
equipment. Whereas when I worked with the younger kids, I had a lot of equipment replacement going on, but it was okay to me. And that's the other thing I tell teachers when I go do my trainings that
Hmm.
they're going to break things and that is okay. What did they learn from it? And
Hmm.
how can they make sure that they don't do that again, in the next
Yeah.
round?
Hmm.
But I definitely would say it's a lot easier for me and with teaching upperclassmen. I will say that.
Hmm. Hmm. You also use Veneer, and what kind of programs do they have that you can use in the science class?
Oh my God. Bernier has like the probes, and kids love using the probes because it makes them feel like real scientists. And even in my class,
Mhm.
they also wear lab coats when they go to do
Okay.
their experiments because I want them to envision their cells in an actual science lab. So they have their lab coats and they have their probes that they get to connect. Um, a Go Graphic Analysis Pro where they can go in and see the data being collected in real time, which
Hmm.
also helps with their understanding of how to read and interpret graphs. Like, what is this data really saying? Like when the line goes up, when the line goes down, when it's curved, so that's why I love using the vernier probes and like when we do dissolve oxygen levels. So in AP environmental science, we do those eco columns. And so they're measuring dissolved oxygen levels. And it's one thing to say it, but when you actually see it and then you can see in real time, okay, the levels are starting to drop. Like, what can I do in teaching them? Like, what does this mean when it goes below
Mhm.
a certain threshold? And so vernier, their probes are very good for helping the students to like visualize and like actually use the equipment in the classroom. So
Hmm.
that
Hmm. So, I also mentioned in your bio that you've written a book, a children's book, Black Girl, You Are Amazing. When did this book come out? And do you talk some at elementary schools to help promote the book, or how do you try to get out the word about the book? Is it through word of mouth, people you know, etc.?
yeah, so I wrote the book back in 2021.
Okay.
It came about as a result of my students that I taught. They were the class of 2019.
Okay.
And so I always say, they just say, at the time I wasn't a doctor, so they would say, Miss Gillam, you are so motivational. Like, they used to tell me I need to start like a TED talk, but call it
Yeah.
did see or something. I forgot exactly what they were telling me. And so anyway, they motivated me to write the book. And even in the book, I do give like a huge shout out to my in the dedication to them because they were really the driving force because they just believed in me. And it's like, you need to get this out because at that time, the climate in the world was very much along like the Black Lives Matter, like people just feeling
Hmm.
a certain way about themselves. And so I wrote that book because I was looking at a lot of young girls who just did not feel confident in who they were.
Hmm.
They would complain about like their hair and different things like that. And I was like, you're beautiful.
Hmm.
You're amazing. And I was like, more of them needed to hear that. And so in turn, I ended up just doing like a children's book with a journal because also my daughter at the time, she might have been in like sixth or seventh grade, and
Hmm.
she could not stand her hair. She could not stand her features. And I was like, wait, what? Let's stop
Hmm.
with this,
Hmm.
and so that was the whole thing. So I need to get back on promoting the book because it is on Amazon. So that is where it's at. Because actually I'm in the works of writing another book with a
Okay.
focus on STEM. It's going to
Hmm.
be like my next book looking at, getting more girls interested in STEM and allowing them to see that they belong in STEM spaces.
Hmm.
And but I do need to start going to elementary schools and posting and letting them know about the book that's out there.
Yeah, and that new book, is that going to be for children as well, or maybe young adults?
It will be still for my target audience is like ages 10 to 13
Okay.
because I felt like that's a good little range and it'll be a book about different STEM topics and then it'll
Hmm.
lend itself into hands-on experiments so that if they want to continue exploring more, I
Hmm.
will give them like a lab setup that they can do to continue learning. Because my other daughter, my daughter Destiny, she was like,
Hmm.
Mom, you really need to do this thing where you start developing like these, she called it STEM kits. Because I do a lot of hands-on with my students, and she was like,
Hmm.
more kids need to experience this because what we're finding in my area, a lot of students in the middle school, they're not actually doing hands-on science. They do a
Hmm.
lot of simulations, which I believe simulations do have their place. Like, don't get me wrong, because there's some things like when I teach gene expression, there
Hmm.
is no hands-on that I
Yeah.
can do to get kids to understand like how proteins are made, or if I'm doing electricity simulation, they have their place, but I also think in some situations they're overused. And so some kids,
Hmm.
and really honestly, you're sparking up a memory with my AP kids this year. I did the foolish thing of assuming, I know people say don't do it,
Hmm.
but I
Hmm.
thought that they knew how to work a microscope. And we were doing this algae thing where they had to do identifying like what algae they were looking at. It was like, Dr. G, we don't know how to work a microscope. And I was like, wait, what?
Hmm.
But then I remember that these, like the kids that are graduating now, those are the kids who were COVID. So their
Yeah.
middle school years was like the COVID pandemic year.
Hmm.
Well, they got back. So like, oh, that's right. And so, just making sure that everybody has an opportunity to feel that love and that joy.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and also realizing that, some kids may not have been taught how to use those things that we always assume, right, that they know. So, but giving them that opportunity. In the bio, I also mentioned that you work with the Black Teacher Project. How did you get involved, and what does this project do in terms of helping Black educators? And is this a nationwide or is it a more regional thing?
Okay, so how did I get involved? I'm gonna start there. It's really a I always tell people kind of funny story.
Hmm.
So I got involved with them probably in like 2021 as well. I guess that was a pivotal year for me. But anywho, I was applying to move up to
Hmm.
leadership position. Like I was trying to be an assistant principal, or just getting anything outside the classroom in the district that I was working in. After going on like 10, 12 interviews, I would keep constantly receiving, sorry, but we went with a more qualified candidate. Please continue to look for more
Hmm.
leadership opportunities. And so finally I got that last one. I was like, leadership opportunities. So then I was like, okay, whatever. So I started Googling leadership opportunities. And
Hmm.
so Black Teacher Project popped up because they had what was called the Leadership and Sustainability Institute. And it was this virtual thing. And I was like, okay, since they said I need to become a better
Hmm.
leader, let me sign up for this. And so then I saw they had a fee. But then they also said, but we do also offer scholarships if your school isn't willing, or able to pay for it. And I was like, yeah, they're not trying to pay for me to do leadership. So anyway, I applied and I applied for the scholarship. And the crazy thing is I didn't even know that I had gotten selected until Olivia, she sent me another note. She was like, hey, we offered you a scholarship, but we see you didn't sign up. The meetings are about to start in about a couple of days. And I was like, oh, let me sign up. And then after I got in that space, I was like, I have found my tribe.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
just I loved it because it was an affinity group. So where I was working was a very rural district. So
Hmm.
not very many people looked like me.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times I was usually one of three things. I was usually the only Black person,
Hmm.
the only woman, or worse, the only Black woman in the room.
Hmm.
And so that's a heavy weight that
Hmm.
people carry. And I know sometimes people like, oh, it's nothing. No, no, no. It's something when you can feel this when you're in those spaces. And so when I got connected to the Black Teacher Project, I loved it so much that I started following them. And then as they would do more offerings, I started like, oh, let me sign up. It's the Black Teacher Project. I got to be a part of this. And then finally they started offering like, hey, do you want to be a support leader for our upcoming sessions? And I did that. And I guess because I kept showing up,
Hmm.
eventually they probably, oh, this girl is committed. And that's when they offered the teacher advisory board. I signed up for
Hmm.
that and then I got selected. And ever since then, like I said, I do everything and I try to tell other educators about it because Black Teacher Project, I will say, definitely saved me as far as
Hmm.
I was ready to leave education. Because, when you're
Wow.
really trying to do something and every single time you're trying to do it, you keep getting blocked and you don't know if it's because of what you look like. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that it was all race, motivated, but you sometimes wonder like, okay, you got all of these qualifications, you have
Yeah.
all of these certifications, but yet you can't ever move up. And then you look at the people who they do move up and you know that they are not doing
Hmm.
just things that you're doing. You start to wonder. And then also with Black Teacher Project, they would teach like ways to navigate triggers or, how to calm your nervous system. So it was always the skills and the support. And then I found like some lifelong friends who just really became my teacher village. And they were like, girl, no, you love the students. And it made me realize that
Hmm.
those doors had to close because my work in the classroom isn't done. And it helped to switch my mindset around instead of looking at, oh, I want to be a assistant principal. I want to be a
Hmm.
principal. Like, well, it's not your time yet. Because your work,
Hmm.
in the classroom still needs to take place. And so,
Hmm.
it helped me to get to that point.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting way how you said like you found out about them when just by a Google search, right? But also you didn't know you'd been accepted for the program or gotten the scholarship until they followed up. So that was a fluke that, they realized that you hadn't responded, but it's a good that you got in and have been doing a lot of work to help other teachers as well. You're also a podcaster. You've had a podcast called Surviving Crazy. So tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Surviving Crazy started off with me and one of my coworker friends. But we could just never ever really get our schedule together. So, to make it work. So we recorded our first episode and he's in another space in life because he's no longer in the classroom. I'm still in the
Hmm.
classroom. And so the premise was talking about like the crazy survival stories because we know that teachers have them like because every day is something like, my God, you survived that, because I tell people, excuse me, the number one thing I like about being a high school teacher is that you never know what you're about to
Yeah.
walk into the classroom. Every day is a new day. Sometimes I might have something planned, but the kids will come with something and you just like, wait, what? And so that was the thing, just talking about crazy stories that you survived so that hopefully other educators would hear those things and say, okay, I am not so crazy because I used to tell people who weren't in education my story sometime and
Yeah.
they would just look at me. And I was like, see, my educator friends, they're gonna understand this and they're gonna know that I survived. Lord, yes.
And so you're going to revamp this sometime
So
soon.
I'm going to revamp it. I'm gonna start in June.
Okay.
Revamping. So if anybody wants to be a guest, if you have a crazy thing, once I throw out all my socials, like please reach out because I'm definitely looking to talk to other educators just about, what is the craziest thing that you survived in education? Because I know there are plenty of stories.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you'll get a lot of people who can share those. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast today. Out of everything we've discussed, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
I would like listeners to remember that your voice has power. And you need to use your voice to advocate for our students because at the end of the day, this is, I'm sure, our why for everybody. So just remember, speak up, say something, and be the change you want to see in the world.
Where can people connect with you and find you online?
You can find me on Instagram or I'm on X. It's at Cecelia, Cecelia 21082 is that for that one. And if you want to look me up on Facebook, I am my name, Cecelia Gillam, Gillam. And TikTok, I am at 210cc if you want to go and see some of the fun things that my students do in STEM so that you can see in a modern classroom, you can still get out there in the world. Please go find me.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today, and I hope people reach out to be on your podcast or to connect and find out more about some of the tools we discussed today.
Yes, I hope so too. Thank you so much.